The Omega went into cursed labor alone, rejected, until the rival Alpha claimed her with one command. Before we continue with the story, tell us where you're watching from and how old you are. I hope you enjoy the story. The moon hung low and swollen in the ink-black sky, a silver eye watching the forest floor with cold indifference. Beneath its pale gaze, Sapphire Ravenclaw stumbled through the undergrowth, her torn blue dress catching on thorns that tore at the fabric like accusing fingers. Each step sent lightning bolts of agony through her swollen belly, and she pressed one trembling hand against the curve where life stirred restlessly, desperately. The child inside her kicked with a fury that matched her own breaking heart. She had been beautiful once. Everyone said so. Golden hair that caught sunlight like spun honey, eyes the color of winter skies, a laugh that could make even the oldest wolves remember their youth. But beauty meant nothing when you carried the child of an alpha who no longer wanted you. Beauty meant nothing when your own pack turned their backs as you were dragged to the forest's edge and cast out like spoiled meat. The rejection had come 3 days ago, under a moon just like this one. Theron Blackmaw, the alpha she had loved with every fiber of her being, had stood before the assembled pack with ice in his eyes and venom in his words. I, Theron Blackmaw, Alpha of the Shadowpine Pack, reject you, Sapphire Ravenclaw, as my mate and Omega. The words had torn through her like silver bullets, shredding the mate bond that had barely begun to form. She had fallen to her knees, hands wrapped protectively around her belly as the pain consumed her. No one had helped her up. Not her mother, who looked away. Not her sister, who had always been jealous of Saphir's bond with the Alpha. Not a single wolf had dared defy their leader. The child is not mine, Theron had declared, though they both knew it was a lie. She had never been with another. But Theron had found a new Omega, one with powerful family connections, one who could give him political alliances. And Sapphire, with her common blood and her inconvenient pregnancy, had become expendable. They had given her until moonrise to leave Packlands. Instead, they had dragged her out at sunset, dumping her at the border with nothing but the dress on her back and the life growing inside her. Now, 3 days later, the contractions had begun. Sapphire collapsed against a massive oak tree, its bark rough against her back as she slid down to the moss-covered ground. The pain came in waves now, relentless and merciless. She could feel her body preparing to bring her child into this cruel world, here in the darkness, alone and forgotten. Not yet, she whispered to her belly, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. Please, little one, not yet. We're not safe. We're not ready. But the baby had its own timeline, and another contraction seized her, forcing a scream from her throat that echoed through the silent forest. Birds erupted from nearby trees, their wings beating frantically against the night air. In the distance, a wolf howled, and Sapphire's blood ran cold. The forests beyond Packlands were dangerous. Rogues prowled these woods, wolves who had been cast out or had chosen to live outside pack law. They had no honor, no restraint. An Omega in labor would be easy prey, and her child, the child of an alpha bloodline, would be valuable. They could ransom it back to Theron, or worse, raise it as their own twisted legacy. Another contraction. Sapphire bit down on her fist to stifle the scream, tasting blood as her teeth broke skin. The moon seemed to grow brighter, its light filtering through the canopy in silvered shafts that illuminated her suffering. She thought of all the stories she had heard as a child, tales of the moon goddess who watched over all wolves, who guided them and blessed their unions. Where was that goddess now? Had she turned her face away too? Please, Sapphire sobbed, not sure if she was praying to the goddess or simply begging the universe for mercy. Please, someone, anyone, help me. The forest remained silent except for the whisper of wind through leaves and her own ragged breathing. She was going to die here. She knew it with a certainty that settled into her bones like winter frost. She was going to die, and her baby with her, and no one would ever know. They would become just another tragedy lost to the woods, bones bleaching under seasons of sun and rain, until even their memory faded. She had just closed her eyes, trying to gather what little strength remained, when she heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, moving through the undergrowth with the confidence of someone who owned these woods. Sapphire's eyes snapped open, her heart hammering against her ribs. She tried to stand, to run, but her body refused to obey. Another contraction hit, and she could only curl around her belly, making herself as small as possible against the tree trunk. The footsteps grew closer. Through her pain-blurred vision, she saw a figure emerge from the shadows between the trees. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a predator's grace. The moonlight caught on long black hair that fell past his shoulders, on eyes that gleamed like polished amber in the darkness. A short beard framed a face that was all hard angles and barely contained power. An alpha. She could feel it radiating from him like heat from a forge, that undeniable presence that made every instinct in her Omega nature want to submit, to present, to offer her throat. But submission had only brought her pain. Submission had left her here, broken and alone. The alpha stopped several feet away, his head tilted as he studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. She could smell him now, cedar and smoke and something wild that spoke of mountains and storms. His scent cut through her fear, through her pain, and for a moment, she forgot to breathe. "Well," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to resonate in her very bones. "What do we have here?" Sapphire tried to speak, to beg for help or mercy, but another contraction stole her words, leaving her gasping and trembling. The alpha's eyes widened slightly, his gaze dropping to her swollen belly, and she saw something flicker across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or concern. He moved closer, each step measured and careful, as if approaching a wounded animal. When he was close enough to touch, he crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Scars marked his face and hands, speaking of battles fought and survived. But his eyes, those startling amber eyes, held something she hadn't expected. Kindness. "You're in labor," he said, and it wasn't a question. Sapphire managed a jerky nod, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "Please," she finally whispered, her voice hoarse. "Please don't hurt us." Something dark crossed his expression, a flash of anger that made her flinch. But the anger wasn't directed at her. She realized that with a start. He was angry for her. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said firmly. "My name is Mailer Redwin. I'm the alpha of the Crimson Peak Pack, and these are our lands you've wandered onto." Crimson Peak. Sapphire's heart sank. She had heard of them. Everyone had. They were the rival pack to Shadowpine, had been for generations. There was bad blood between them, old feuds and territorial disputes that occasionally erupted into violence. If Mailer discovered she was from Shadowpine, if he knew she carried Theron Blackmaw's child. She started, but another contraction cut her off, this one so intense that she couldn't stop the scream that tore from her throat. Her vision went white at the edges, and she felt herself starting to slip away. Strong arms caught her before she could fall. Mailer had moved with supernatural speed, gathering her against his chest as if she weighed nothing. His warmth enveloped her, chasing away the cold that had seeped into her bones. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, and something in her, some broken part of her Omega soul, wanted nothing more than to curl into that warmth and never leave. "Stay with me," Mailer commanded, and the alpha voice in his words wrapped around her like a tether, pulling her back from the edge. "What's your name?" "Sapphire," she gasped. "Sapphire Ravenclaw." His arms tightened around her almost imperceptibly. "Ravenclaw. That's a Shadowpine name." She tensed, waiting for him to throw her down, to leave her to her fate. But he didn't. Instead, he stood, lifting her with him as easily as if she were a child. "We need to get you somewhere safe," he said, his voice tight with controlled urgency. "Somewhere warm. My den isn't far." "Why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Why would you help me? I'm nothing. I'm rejected. You're an Omega in cursed labor, cast out and alone," Mailer interrupted, his jaw clenched. "And whatever else you might be, you're on my lands now. That makes you my responsibility." He started walking, his strides long and purposeful, navigating the dark forest with the ease of someone who knew every root and stone. Sapphire let her head fall against his shoulder, too exhausted and too racked with pain to argue. She could feel his pack bond humming beneath his skin, could sense the strength of the connections that tied him to his wolves. It was so different from the frayed, broken bond she had felt with Shadowpine, even before the rejection. "How long have you been in labor?" Mailer asked, his voice cutting through her haze. I don't know. Hours? The contraction started at sunset." He cursed softly. "First child?" "Yes. And you're alone. No mate. No pack." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "I was rejected. 3 days ago. They cast me out." Mailer's arms tightened around her again, and she felt a growl building in his chest, a sound of pure rage that he was barely containing. "Rejected while pregnant?" He said the child wasn't his, but it is. It's his. There's never been anyone else." The words came out broken, punctuated by her labored breathing. But he found someone better, someone who could give him what he needed. "There is nothing better than an Omega carrying your child," Mailer said, and the absolute certainty in his voice made something crack open in her chest. Any Alpha who would reject that doesn't deserve to be called Alpha at all. They emerged from the dense forest into a clearing, and Sapphire saw structures rising from the earth like natural formations. Not the wooden lodges of Shadowpine, but stone buildings built into the hillside itself, their walls covered in climbing vines and moss. Warm light glowed from windows, and she could hear the distant sounds of pack life, voices and laughter, and the comfort of community. Mailer carried her toward the largest structure, a building that seemed to grow out of the hill itself. Wolves appeared in doorways and windows as they passed, drawn by their Alpha's presence and the scent of a strange Omega in distress. Sapphire felt their eyes on her, heard their whispered questions, but Mailer ignored them all, his focus entirely on getting her inside. The interior of his den was warm and dimly lit, with thick furs covering the floors, and walls hung with tapestries depicting wolves and moon phases. He carried her through a main room and into a smaller chamber dominated by a large bed, piled with blankets and pillows. The scent of cedar was stronger here, mixed with earth and something uniquely Mailer. He laid her down gently on the bed, arranging pillows behind her back and under her knees with a care that seemed at odds with his fierce appearance. Another contraction hit, and Sapphire arched up with a cry, her hand shooting out to grab his arm. His skin was warm and solid under her fingers, an anchor in the storm of pain. "Easy," he murmured, covering her hand with his. "I'm here. You're not alone." A woman rushed into the room, older, with silver threading through her dark hair and gentle eyes. She carried a basket of supplies and moved with practiced efficiency. "Alara," Mailer said. "This is Sapphire. She's in labor and needs help." Alara's expression softened as she took in Sapphire's state. "Of course, Alpha. I'll take care of her." She moved to Sapphire's side, her hands already reaching to assess the situation. "How far apart are the contractions, dear?" Close. Very close." Sapphire's voice was barely a whisper. Alara's examination was quick, but gentle. When she looked up, her expression was grave. "The baby is coming soon. Tonight. But..." She hesitated, glancing at Mailer. The birth will be difficult. She's weak from exposure and stress, and cursed labor without a mate bond to help ease the pain. What do you need? Mailer asked immediately. Herbs for strength and pain, warm water, clean cloths, and... Alara paused. Alpha. She needs support, physical presence. An alpha's presence can help stabilize an omega during birth, even without a mate bond. Mailer didn't hesitate. I'll stay. Sapphire wanted to protest, to tell him he didn't have to bind himself to her suffering, but another contraction stole her words. This one lasted longer, deeper, and she felt something shift inside her. The baby was coming. Whether she was ready or not, whether she was safe or not, her child was fighting to be born. The next hours blurred into an endless cycle of pain and pressure, of Alara's calm voice guiding her through each contraction, of Mailer's steady presence at her side. He held her hand when she needed something to grip, let her curse and scream and sob without judgment. At some point, he moved behind her, supporting her weight against his chest, and the solid warmth of him gave her strength she didn't know she had left. You're doing so well, he murmured against her hair during a brief respite between contractions. You're so strong, Sapphire. I'm not strong, she gasped. I'm broken. I'm nothing. You're everything, he countered fiercely. You're fighting for your child. You survived rejection. You made it through 3 days alone in hostile territory while carrying a life inside you. If that's not strength, I don't know what is. His words wrapped around her heart like a balm, soothing wounds she hadn't realized were still bleeding. She had felt so worthless for so long, so disposable. But in Mailer's arms, with his absolute conviction echoing in her ears, she felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. Push, Alara commanded, and Sapphire bore down with everything she had left. The pain was transcendent now, beyond anything she could have imagined. But underneath it, she could feel her body doing what it was designed to do, opening and stretching to bring new life into the world. That's it, Alara encouraged. I can see the head. One more big push, Sapphire. You can do this. Mailer's hand found hers again, their fingers interlacing. We've got you, he said, and the we made her want to weep for entirely different reasons. She pushed and pushed and pushed, until finally, mercifully, she felt the baby slide free. For a moment there was only silence, terrible and absolute. Sapphire's heart stopped, fear flooding through her exhausted body. Then, piercing the quiet, came the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. A cry. Strong and furious and alive. It's a boy, Alara announced, her voice thick with emotion. A healthy baby boy. Tears streamed down Sapphire's face as Alara placed the squirming bundle on her chest. He was perfect. Tiny and red-faced and covered in vernix, but perfect. She could already see the wolf in him, the way his little hands curled into claws, the shape of his ears. And his eyes, when they fluttered open for just a moment, were the pale silver of a full moon. Hello, little one, she whispered, pressing her lips to his downy head. Hello, my beautiful boy. She looked up at Mailer, expecting to see him preparing to leave now that his duty was done. Instead, she found him staring at the baby with an expression she couldn't quite read. Wonder, perhaps, or something deeper. What will you name him? Mailer asked softly. Sapphire looked down at her son, at the pure white fuzz that covered his head where baby wolves usually bore the color they would carry into their first shift. White as snow, white as moonlight, white as possibility. Draven, she said. His name is Draven. Mailer reached out slowly, giving her time to refuse, and gently touched one finger to Draven's tiny fist. The baby's hand opened, and then closed around that finger with surprising strength, holding on as if he never intended to let go. Something passed between them in that moment, something Sapphire felt in her very soul. A connection, fragile and new, but real. Mailer felt it too. She could see it in the way his eyes widened, in the sharp intake of breath he couldn't quite hide. Alara worked quietly, cleaning Sapphire up and making her comfortable, wrapping Draven in soft cloths once he had been cleaned and examined. "He's strong," she told Sapphire with a smile. "Small, but strong. He'll thrive." As the adrenaline of birth began to fade, exhaustion crashed over Sapphire like a wave. She could barely keep her eyes open, but she fought sleep, terrified that if she closed her eyes, this would all turn out to be a dream, that she would wake up alone in the forest, cold and dying. "Rest," Mailer said gently. "You're safe here. Both of you." "You'll stay?" The question came out small and uncertain. "I'll stay." She wanted to argue, to tell him he had done enough, but her body was already surrendering to sleep. The last thing she felt was Mailer adjusting the blankets around her and Draven, his presence a solid wall between them and the world. When Sapphire woke, sunlight was streaming through a window she didn't remember seeing. For a moment, panic seized her. Where was Draven? But then she felt the warm weight against her chest, and looked down to see her son sleeping peacefully, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. The room was empty except for them. Mailer was gone, and with his absence came a strange hollowness she didn't want to examine too closely. He had helped her because it was the right thing to do, because she had been on his lands and in distress. That was all. She couldn't let herself hope for anything more. A soft knock on the doorframe made her look up. A young woman stood there, barely out of her teens, with kind eyes and a tentative smile. "Hello," she said. "My name is Lyra. Alpha Mailer asked me to check on you. How are you feeling?" "Sore," Sapphire admitted, "but better. Thank you." Lyra came in carrying a tray laden with food and water. "You must be starving. Alara said you need to eat to keep your strength up for the little one." As if summoned by the mention of food, Draven began to fuss, his small mouth searching. Sapphire adjusted her dress and helped him latch on to Nurse, marveling at how natural it felt, how right. "He's beautiful," Lyra said softly. "I've never seen a pup with white fur before." "Neither have I," Sapphire murmured. In Shadowpine, cubs were usually born with the coloring they would carry into adulthood. Brown, gray, black, occasionally red. But white. White was the color of the moon goddess herself, of purity and power and ancient magic. "Alpha Mailer has called a pack meeting," Lyra said, a note of nervousness entering her voice. "About you and the baby. He wants everyone to hear the full story before decisions are made." Fear prickled down Sapphire's spine. "Decisions?" "About whether you can stay," Lyra said gently. "We're not like other packs. Alpha Mailer believes in hearing all sides. He'll let you speak for yourself if you want to." The idea of facing an entire pack, of having to explain her shame and rejection to strangers, made Sapphire's stomach twist. But what choice did she have? She couldn't survive alone with a newborn, not in the wilderness, not with rogues and dangers lurking in every shadow. "When?" she asked. "This afternoon. It will give you time to rest and eat. Alara will come help you get ready." After Lyra left, Sapphire ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Draven finished nursing and fell back asleep, his small body warm and trusting against her. She studied his face, memorizing every detail. If the pack voted to cast them out, these might be their last hours of peace. Alara arrived as the sun reached its zenith, carrying a clean dress, simple but well-made, in a soft gray that matched Sapphire's eyes. "Let me help you," she said, and there was no judgment in her voice, only compassion. As Alara helped her wash and dress, Sapphire worked up the courage to ask the question burning in her mind. "Is Mailer..." Is your alpha always like this? Like what, dear? Kind, to strangers, to enemies. Alara was quiet for a moment, her hands gentle as she brushed out Sapphire's tangled hair. Alpha Mailer has seen what cruelty does, she finally said. His father was Alpha before him, and he ruled through fear and violence. Mailer was just a boy when he watched his father reject his own brother for showing mercy to a wounded enemy. That brother died alone in the woods, cast out like garbage. Sapphire's breath caught. That's terrible. It shaped him, Alara continued. When Mailer challenged his father and won the Alpha position, he swore things would be different. That no one under his protection would suffer the way his uncle did. That mercy would not be seen as weakness. She paused, meeting Saphir's eyes in the reflection of a bronze mirror. But he's also not foolish. He'll want the truth from you. I'll give it to him, Saphir said quietly. I have nothing left to lose. The pack had gathered in a large hall built into the hillside, its stone walls covered with torches that cast dancing shadows. Sapphire stood at the entrance, Draven bundled in her arms, and felt the weight of dozens of eyes turning to assess her. Some faces were curious, some skeptical, some openly hostile. Mailer sat in a carved wooden chair at the far end of the hall, his presence commanding even in stillness. When his eyes found hers, something in her chest tightened, and she had to remind herself to breathe. Come forward, Sapphire Ravenclaw, he said, his alpha voice carrying through the space without effort. She walked down the center aisle, keeping her head high despite every instinct screaming at her to submit, to show her throat, to prove she wasn't a threat. Whispers followed her progress. She's from Shadowpine, carrying another alpha's cub. Why is she here? What does Mailer think he's doing? When she reached the front, Mailer gestured to a spot beside his chair. Stand here, where the pack can see you. Then, to the assembled wolves. Last night, I found this Omega on our lands. She was in cursed labor, abandoned and alone. Some of you have already heard pieces of the story, but I want everyone to hear it from her. Sapphire, tell us what happened. She had thought this would be hard. She had thought the shame would choke her, that the words would stick in her throat. But as she looked out at the sea of faces, something inside her shifted. She was tired of being ashamed, tired of carrying the weight of someone else's betrayal. 3 days ago, I was rejected by Theron Blackmaw, Alpha of the Shadowpine Pack, she began, her voice steady. I was 5 months pregnant with his child. We had been together for a year. He told me he loved me, that we would be mated when the baby came. Then he met an Omega from a powerful family, one who could bring him alliances and territory. He decided I was expendable. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several wolves looked angry on her behalf, while others remained impassive. He rejected me in front of the entire pack and declared that the child I carried wasn't his. It was a lie. There has never been anyone else, but lies are easier than truth sometimes. She looked down at Draven, who was watching her with those strange silver eyes, so alert for a newborn. They gave me until moonrise to leave. Instead, they dragged me to the border and threw me out. I wandered for 3 days with no food and only stream water to drink. When the contraction started, I thought I would die. I thought we both would. She raised her eyes to Mailer. Then your Alpha found me. He didn't have to help. He didn't have to care. I'm from a rival pack. I'm carrying another Alpha's child. But he brought me here. He stayed with me through the birth. He saved both our lives. Why? The question came from a grizzled older male near the front. Why should we harbor a Shadowpine Omega? Theron Blackmaw has been trying to claim our eastern hunting grounds for years. This could be a trick. Look at her, Marcus, a female voice called out. Does she look like she's faking rejection sickness, or the birth of a child? It could still be a ploy, Marcus insisted. Send her back. Let Shadowpine clean up their own mess. No. Mailer's single word cut through the rising arguments like a blade. He stood, and the entire room fell silent. No one is sending her back. Sapphire Ravenclaw has been wronged by her former alpha and pack. She came to our land seeking nothing but a place to die with dignity. Instead, she found sanctuary, and she will continue to have it. But Alpha, another wolf protested, the complications are mine to handle, Mailer interrupted. I am your Alpha. I make the decisions about who finds refuge here, and I have decided. His gaze swept the room, daring anyone to challenge him. Sapphire and her son will stay as long as they wish. They will be given a home, protection, and a place in this pack if they choose to accept it. The silence that followed was absolute. Sapphire stared at Maelor, unable to believe what she was hearing. A place in the pack? Not just temporary shelter, but a real home? There's something else, Mailer continued, his voice softer now. Something I felt last night when Draven was born. He turned to look at Sapphire directly. Something I think you felt too. Her heart began to pound. Surely he couldn't mean. The moon goddess works in mysterious ways, Mailer said. She brings souls together for reasons we don't always understand. Last night, when I held Draven for the first time, I felt a pull, a connection. Not a mate bond, not with you, not yet. But something deeper, a sense of rightness, of destiny. You can't be serious, Marcus said, though his voice had lost its sharp edge. You're saying this Omega and her cub are meant to be yours? I'm saying that the goddess put Sapphire in my path for a reason, Mailer replied. I'm saying that no alpha worth his title would turn away from that call. He looked at Sapphire again, and the intensity in his amber eyes made her knees weak. But the choice is hers. I'm not Theron Blackmaw. I don't claim what isn't freely given. All eyes turned to Sapphire. She could feel the weight of expectation, the curiosity and skepticism and hope all tangled together. Draven stirred in her arms, making a small sound, and she looked down at him. What did she want? Safety, yes, security for her son. But more than that, she realized, she wanted what Mailer was offering. Not just shelter, but belonging. Not just protection, but partnership. She had felt that pull, too, that sense of rightness when Mailer had held her through the birth, when he had touched Draven's tiny hand. I felt it, she whispered. Then louder. I felt it, too, when you stayed with me, when you held me. I didn't understand what it was, but I felt it. Mailer descended from his chair and came to stand before her. Up close, she could see the scars that marked him, the proof of battles fought and survived. But she could also see the gentleness in his eyes, the controlled strength that spoke of a man who knew his own power and chose to wield it carefully. I won't rush you, he said. You've been through trauma. You need time to heal, to learn to trust again. But I want you to know that you have a place here. Both of you. For as long as you want it. What if Theron comes for us? She asked, giving voice to the fear that had been gnawing at her. What if he decides he wants his heir after all? Mailer's expression went hard. Let him try. He'll find that Crimson Peak wolves don't give up what's ours without a fight. Ours, Sapphire repeated, testing the word. It felt foreign on her tongue, after so long of being nothing, of belonging nowhere. Ours, Mailer confirmed, if you'll have us. Around them, the pack watched in fascination as their alpha courted a rejected Omega in front of them all. It was unconventional, unheard of even. But as Sapphire looked into Mailer's eyes and felt Draven's warmth against her chest, she realized she didn't care about convention. She cared about survival, about giving her son the life he deserved, about finding, perhaps, the love she had thought was lost to her forever. "I'll stay," she said. "We'll stay." The pack erupted in a cacophony of voices, some approving, some concerned, all surprised, but Mailer ignored them all, his attention fixed solely on Sapphire. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her cheek with one scarred hand. "Thank you," he murmured, "for trusting me. I won't let you regret it." The weeks that followed were a revelation. Mailer had a small cottage prepared for Sapphire and Draven, close enough to his den that he could hear if she called, but far enough to give her privacy and space to heal. It was simple but comfortable, with a soft bed, a warm hearth, and windows that let in the morning light. Alara visited daily, checking on Draven and teaching Sapphire the ways of the Crimson Peak Pack. They were different from Shadowpine in almost every way. Where Theron had ruled through fear and dominance, Mailer led through respect and earned loyalty. Pack members were encouraged to speak their minds, to bring disputes to him for fair judgment rather than settling things through violence. "He's changed everything," Lyra told Sapphire one afternoon as they sat in the cottage watching Draven sleep. "When his father was Alpha, we lived in constant fear. Wolves were cast out for the smallest infractions. Omegas were treated as property. But Mailer, he sees us as people, as equals, just with different roles." Sapphire watched through the window as Mailer trained with some of the younger wolves. His movements were fluid and deadly, every strike precise and controlled. But between rounds, she saw him laughing with them, correcting their form with patience rather than anger. He was nothing like Theron, nothing like any Alpha she had ever known. He came to visit her every evening, a routine that quickly became the highlight of her day. He never stayed long, never pushed for more than she was ready to give. Sometimes they talked, sharing stories of their childhoods and their dreams. Sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence while Draven nursed or slept. "Tell me about your uncle," Sapphire asked one night. "The one your father rejected." Mailer's expression grew distant. "His name was Kieran. He was my father's younger brother, gentler than any of us. He believed you could be strong without being cruel. He stared into the fire, the flames reflecting in his eyes. There was a skirmish with a neighboring pack. Kieran wounded one of their wolves but refused to deliver the killing blow. Said the male was already beaten, that killing him would be dishonorable. Your father saw it differently," Sapphire guessed. "He called Kieran weak, soft, unworthy of the Redwind name. He rejected him in front of the entire pack and cast him out." Mailer's jaw clenched. "I was 12. I tried to stop it, but I was just a boy. They dragged Kieran away, and we never saw him again. My mother said he died within a week. Rejection sickness, exposure, or rogues. We'll never know." Sapphire reached out and covered Mailer's hand with hers. "I'm sorry." "That's why I couldn't leave you," he said, turning his hand to interlace their fingers. "When I found you in the forest, rejected and in labor, I saw Kieran. I saw the injustice of it, the cruelty, and I knew I couldn't let history repeat itself." "You saved me," Sapphire said softly. "You saved us both." "You saved yourselves," Mailer countered. "You survived 3 days that would have killed most wolves. You brought Draven into this world through sheer will. I just gave you a safe place to land." As the weeks turned into months, Sapphire felt herself healing in ways she hadn't thought possible. The rejection wound still ached sometimes, a phantom pain in her chest where the mate bond had been torn away. But it was getting easier to breathe, easier to imagine a future that held more than just survival. Draven thrived. He grew stronger every day, his tiny body filling out, his silver eyes bright and alert. The pack had taken to him quickly, charmed by his unusual coloring and his surprisingly calm temperament. Even Marcus, who had been so skeptical at first, could often be found letting Draven grip his finger with those surprisingly strong baby hands. but it was Mailer who held a special place in Draven's heart. The baby lit up whenever the Alpha entered the room, his small arms reaching out, demanding to be held. And Mailer always obliged, cradling Draven with a gentleness that seemed impossible from such a fierce warrior. "He thinks you're his father," Sapphire said one evening, watching as Mailer rocked Draven to sleep. "I could be," Mailer replied quietly. "If you wanted, if you were ready." Her heart stuttered. "Mailer." "I know it's too soon," he said quickly. "I know you're still healing from what Theron did, but Sapphire, you have to know by now how I feel, how I've felt since the night I found you." "Tell me," she whispered. "I need to hear it." Mailer laid Draven gently in his cradle before turning to face Sapphire fully. "I'm in love with you, not because you needed saving, not because of some sense of duty or destiny, but because of who you are, your strength, your courage, the way you love Draven with everything you have, the way you're learning to trust again, even though you have every reason not to." Tears spilled down Saphir's cheeks. "I'm broken," she said. "Theron broke me." "You're not broken," Mailer said fiercely. He crossed to her, framing her face with his hands. "You're scarred. There's a difference. Scars mean you survived. They mean you're stronger than what tried to destroy you." "I'm afraid," she admitted. "What if I can't be what you need? What if I can't bond again? What if—" He silenced her with a kiss, soft and gentle and full of promise. When he pulled back, his amber eyes were blazing. "I don't need you to be anything other than what you are. The bond will come or it won't, in its own time. But Sapphire, I'm yours whether fate acknowledges it or not. I'm Draven's whether blood claims it or not. You're my pack now, my family." "Mailer," she breathed. And then she was kissing him back, pouring all her fear and hope and desperate love into the press of their lips. He gathered her close, his arms around her strong and sure, and for the first time since Theron's rejection, she felt whole. They kept their relationship quiet at first, letting it grow naturally without the pressure of pack expectations. But wolves had keen senses, and it wasn't long before everyone knew that their Alpha was courting the rejected Omega, that he spent his evenings at her cottage, that Draven called him Papa with increasing frequency. Some disapproved. Marcus remained skeptical, convinced that Theron would eventually come to reclaim what he had thrown away. Others worried about the political implications of their Alpha bonding with a wolf from a rival pack. But Mailer didn't care about their opinions. He had made his choice, and he stood by it with the same unwavering conviction he brought to everything in his life. Spring arrived, and with it came the first signs that Draven was going to be special. Most wolf pups didn't shift until they were several months old. But Draven managed his first transformation at barely 3 months. Sapphire had been laying him down for a nap, when suddenly her baby boy wasn't there anymore. In his place was a tiny white wolf cub, his fur as pure as fresh snow, his eyes still that uncanny silver. She had screamed for Maelor, terrified that something was wrong. But when he arrived and saw Draven in his wolf form, he had laughed with delight. "He's perfect," Mailer had said, scooping up the tiny cub who yipped and wagged his tail. "Look at him, Sapphire. He's absolutely perfect." Draven shifted back and forth over the next few days, sometimes staying in his wolf form for hours, exploring his cottage on unsteady paws. The pack was amazed. Early shifting was rare, usually a sign of strong bloodlines and powerful potential. "His father's bloodline is strong," Ilara observed. "Alpha blood runs true. And his mother is no weakling either," Mailer added, his arm around Sapphire's waist. "Look at what she survived. That strength is in Draven too." As summer approached, Sapphire found herself settling into her new life with an ease that surprised her. She had friends now, Lyra, Ilara, and several other pack members who had welcomed her without reservation. She had a purpose, helping with the younger pups while their parents worked, teaching them stories and songs her own mother had taught her long ago. And she had Mailer, strong, steady Mailer, who loved her without trying to possess her, who supported her without making her feel weak. He was everything Theron had pretended to be, and more. The mate bond still hadn't snapped into place, that mystical connection that would tie their souls together. Part of Sapphire worried it never would, that Theron's rejection had damaged that part of her beyond repair. But Mailer never pressured her, never made her feel like she was failing him. "The bond isn't what makes us mates," he told her one night, as they lay tangled together in her bed, Draven sleeping peacefully in the next room. "It's just a gift from the goddess, a blessing. But love, Sapphire? Love is a choice we make every day. And I choose you. Bond or no bond. I choose you too," she whispered against his chest. "I love you, Mailer." It was the first time she had said the words aloud, and she felt his arms tighten around her, felt his heart rate increase. "Say it again," he murmured. "I love you." Again. "I love you, Mailer Redwyn. I love you." He rolled them over, bracing himself above her, his long black hair falling around them like a curtain. "I will never let you regret those words," he promised. "I will spend every day of my life proving I'm worthy of them." Then he was kissing her, and talking became impossible. The summer solstice brought the pack gathering, a celebration that lasted 3 days and included wolves from all over the territory. It was Sapphire's first major pack event as a member of Crimson Peak, and she was nervous. Would the other wolves accept her? Would they see her as Mailer's Omega, or as Shadowpine's cast-off? "They'll love you," Mailer assured her the morning of the first day. "Just be yourself." She dressed carefully in a new dress that Lyra had helped her make, a deep green that brought out the color of her eyes. Draven, now 6 months old and growing fast, wore a small leather vest that made him look like a tiny warrior. He was in his wolf form today, preferring 4 legs to 2, his white fur gleaming in the sunlight. The gathering was held in a massive clearing at the center of Packlands. Wolves had come from all corners of the territory, dozens upon dozens of them, filling the space with noise and laughter and the sense of cooking food. Sapphire held Draven in her arms and stayed close to Mailer's side, drawing strength from his presence. The other alphas were there too, leaders of the smaller family groups that made up the larger pack structure. They greeted Mailer with respect, and when he introduced Sapphire, they treated her with the courtesy due to an alpha's mate, even though she and Mailer hadn't completed a formal bonding ceremony. It was during the feast that everything changed. Sapphire was laughing at something Lyra had said, Draven playing with other pups nearby under the watchful eyes of several adults, when she felt it. A presence at the edge of the gathering, familiar and terrible and impossible. Her blood turned to ice. She knew that scent, would know it anywhere even though months had passed. Cedar and midnight and cruelty. Theron Blackmaw had come to the gathering. Mailer felt her reaction immediately, his arm coming around her shoulders protectively. "What's wrong?" She couldn't speak, could only stare at the figure emerging from the tree line. He looked the same, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair pulled back, his face handsome in a cold, classical way. But now she could see what she had been blind to before. The cruelty around his eyes, the calculating way he assessed everything and everyone as potential tools or threats. Theron's eyes found her across the clearing, and his expression shifted from surprise to anger to something darker. Possessiveness. "That's him," Saphir whispered. "Theron. He's here." The news spread through the gathering like wildfire. Wolves who had been laughing and eating fell silent, turning to watch as Theron Blackmaw walked into their celebration uninvited. Several of the younger males moved to intercept him, but Mailer held up a hand. "Let him approach," Mailer said, his voice carrying. "Let's hear what the Shadowpine Alpha has to say." Theron crossed the clearing with the confidence of someone who had never been truly challenged. When he was 10 feet away, he stopped, his eyes moving between Mailer and Sapphire. "So it's true," Theron said. "My Omega ran to you like a wounded animal seeking scraps." "Your Omega?" Mailer's voice was dangerously soft. "You rejected her. You cast her out while she carried your child. You have no claim here." "That's where you're wrong, Redwyn." Theron's smile was sharp. "I never completed the rejection ritual. I never severed the mate bond officially. Which means by pack law, Sapphire is still mine." The words hit Sapphire like a physical blow. She had assumed, had believed, that Theron's public rejection was enough. But he was right. The full ritual required an alpha to speak the words 3 times under the full moon, witnessed by the pack and blessed by the pack's shaman. Theron had only said them once, in anger. "That's a technicality," Mailer growled. "You made your intentions clear." "Intentions don't matter. Law matters." Theron's gaze fixed on Sapphire. "Come here, Omega. It's time to go home." Every instinct in her Omega nature screamed at her to obey, to submit to the alpha who had first claimed her. But she stayed frozen, her hand clutching Mailer's arm. "I'm not going anywhere with you," she said, her voice shaking but determined. Theron's eyes flashed. "You don't have a choice. You're mine." "She's mine," Mailer countered, and the alpha dominance in his voice made every wolf in the clearing drop their eyes. "She came to my lands seeking sanctuary. I gave it. She and her son are under my protection." "Her son," Theron repeated mockingly. "You mean my heir. The white wolf cub I've been hearing about. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" His smile widened. "I want him back. A wolf that color, with alpha blood, he'll be invaluable to my pack." Rage, pure and incandescent, flooded through Sapphire. "You wanted nothing to do with us. You called him a bastard. You said he wasn't yours." "I made a mistake," Theron said, and he actually had the audacity to sound regretful. "I was hasty, impulsive, but I've thought about it, and I realize now that I was wrong. The white wolf is a sign from the moon goddess. My son should be raised in Shadowpine as my heir." "Over my dead body," Sapphire spat. "That can be arranged," Theron replied coldly. "Come back willingly, or I'll challenge Redwyn for the right to take you. Pack law allows it." The clearing erupted in angry shouts, but Mailer raised his hand for silence. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but Sapphire could feel the rage simmering beneath. "You want to challenge me? Fine, but not for her. She's not property to be won or lost. If you want to fight, Theron, we fight for the right to call ourselves Alpha. Winner takes everything, territories, allegiances, and the respect of every pack in these mountains." "You'd stake your entire pack on this?" Theron asked, genuine surprise coloring his tone. "I'd stake everything," Mailer confirmed, "because that's what they mean to me. Sapphire, Draven, they're worth more than all the territory in the world." Sapphire's heart felt like it was going to burst. He was willing to risk everything for her. Everything. "Mailer, no," she whispered. "You don't have to do this." He turned to her, cupping her face gently. "Yes, I do. Because you deserve someone who will fight for you, who will stand between you and anyone who tries to hurt you. That's what I'm doing, Sapphire. I'm standing." She kissed him then, not caring that the entire gathering was watching, that Theron was seeing. She kissed him with everything she had, trying to pour her love and faith and desperate hope into the press of their lips. When they parted, Mailer turned back to Theron. "Tomorrow at dawn, the old challenge grounds. Do you accept?" Theron's jaw was clenched, his eyes blazing with jealousy and rage. "I accept. And when I win, I'm taking them both back to Shadowpine. The Omega will learn her place, and my son will be raised properly. If you win, Mailer corrected. But you won't. The rest of the gathering passed in a blur. Wolves from both packs gathered in tight groups, discussing the challenge, placing bets, arguing over who would win. The younger Crimson Peak wolves were confident in their alpha, but the older ones remembered Theron's reputation. He was a fierce fighter, brutal and efficient. That night, Sapphire couldn't sleep. She lay in Mailer's arms, listening to his heartbeat, trying to memorize the feel of him in case the worst happened. Don't think like that, Mailer murmured, somehow sensing her spiraling thoughts. I'm going to win. You can't know that. Theron is strong, vicious. So am I. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. And I have something he doesn't. Something worth fighting for. What if he kills you? The words came out broken, terrified. He won't. But if he does, then you take Draven and you run, Mailer said firmly. You go to Marcus. He'll help you, despite his grumbling. You cross the mountains to the western packs. They owe me a debt. They'll give you sanctuary. I don't want sanctuary without you, Sapphire said, tears streaming down her face. I can't lose you. Not now. Not after everything. You won't lose me. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I promise you, Sapphire. I'm going to win. And then we're going to complete the mate bond properly. We're going to raise Draven together. We're going to have more children if you want them. We're going to grow old together, surrounded by our pack and our family. Promise me, she demanded. Promise me you'll fight with everything you have. I promise, he said. I swear it on my life, on my pack, on every star in the sky. I will win. Dawn came too quickly. Sapphire dressed in numb silence, her hands shaking as she tried to braid her hair. Lyra appeared to help, her own face drawn with worry. He'll win, Lyra said, though her voice lacked conviction. Alpha Mailer is the strongest wolf I've ever known. Theron is strong too, Sapphire whispered. And he fights dirty. He doesn't care about honor. Then it's a good thing Mailer doesn't just rely on honor. They left Draven with Alara, the older woman promising to keep him safe no matter what happened. The white wolf cub seemed to sense something was wrong, whimpering as Sapphire kissed his fuzzy head. Mama will be back soon, she promised him, praying it wasn't a lie. Papa too. The challenge grounds were ancient, a circular clearing marked by standing stones that predated any living pack. Wolves had gathered from all over, creating a living ring around the space. The air crackled with tension and anticipation. Theron was already there, stripped to the waist, his muscled torso marked with ritual scars. He was in human form, as was traditional for the first part of an alpha challenge. The fight would begin on 2 legs and transition to 4 only when both alphas agreed or when one forced the shift. Mailer arrived shortly after, and Sapphire's breath caught. He too had stripped to the waist, revealing the extensive scarring that marked his chest and back. But where Theron looked like a warrior posing for a statue, Mailer looked like war itself, raw, powerful, and inevitable. Their eyes met across the clearing, and Mailer gave her a small nod, a promise, a vow. An elder from a neutral pack stepped into the center to officiate. The challenge has been called and accepted. This fight is to submission or death. The winner will be recognized as the stronger alpha. The loser's pack will disperse or submit to the winner's rule. Do both alphas understand and accept these terms? I accept, Mailer said. I accept, Theron echoed. Then let the moon goddess witness this challenge and bless the worthy. Begin! The elder barely had time to step back before Theron launched himself at Mailer, moving with supernatural speed. His fist connected with Mailer's jaw, snapping his head back. Blood sprayed from split lips. But Maelor didn't fall. He absorbed the blow, rolled with it, and came back with a strike to Theron's ribs that sounded like a tree breaking. Theron grunted, backing away, his eyes wide with surprise. They circled each other, trading blows that would have killed a human, that cracked bones and split skin. Sapphire watched in horror, her hands pressed over her mouth to keep from screaming. Every time Theron landed a hit, she felt it like a knife to her own heart. But every time Maelor struck back, she felt a fierce pride. "He's going to lose," a Shadowpine wolf near her muttered. "Redwind's strong, but Alpha Theron is relentless." "You don't know Maelor," Lyra snapped back. "He's never lost a challenge. There's a first time for everything." The fight dragged on, both alphas refusing to yield. Blood slicked the ground, making footing treacherous. Theron managed to get Maelor in a chokehold, his arm locked around Maelor's throat, cutting off air. "Submit," Theron growled. "Submit, and I'll let you live." Maelor's response was to drive his elbow back into Theron's solar plexus with enough force to crack ribs. Theron's grip loosened, and Maelor twisted free, gasping for air. "Never," Maelor spat. "I'll die before I let you take them." Something in Theron's eyes shifted, a calculation forming. "That can be arranged." He shifted then, his body rippling and reforming into his wolf form. He was massive, easily the size of a small horse, his fur black as midnight, his eyes yellow and filled with killing intent. Maelor shifted in response, and Sapphire's breath caught. She had seen him in wolf form before, but never like this, never fully unleashed. He was bigger than Theron, his fur a deep gray black, his amber eyes burning with inner fire. When he growled, the sound resonated in her bones. The fight that followed was brutal. They crashed together like thunder, all teeth and claws and primal fury. Theron was fast, darting in and out, trying to find weak spots. But Maelor was patient, weathering the attacks, waiting for his moment. It came when Theron overextended, lunging for Maelor's throat. Maelor sidestepped and caught Theron's leg in his jaws, bearing down with crushing force. Bone snapped audibly. Theron howled, trying to pull free. But Maelor held on, shaking his head like a dog with a toy. When he released, Theron collapsed, his leg mangled, blood pouring from the wound. He tried to stand, to keep fighting, but the injury was too severe. His leg wouldn't support his weight. Maelor shifted back to human form, standing over Theron's prone wolf body. "Submit," he commanded, his alpha voice absolute. "This is over." Theron shifted back, his face contorted in pain and rage. "Never. I'll never submit to you." "Then you force my hand." Maelor's expression was grim. "I didn't want it to end this way, Black Maw. But you came to my lands. You threatened my family, and I will not let that stand." He shifted again, and Sapphire knew what was coming. The kill bite. The end. "Stop!" The shout came from an unexpected source. Marcus, the old wolf who had been so skeptical of Sapphire, stepped into the circle. "Alpha, you've won. He's beaten. Killing him would only create more enemies, more bloodshed. Show mercy. Show the watching packs that Crimson Peak is strong enough to be merciful." Maelor hesitated, his wolf form tense. For a long moment, Sapphire thought he would ignore Marcus, would deliver the killing blow anyway. But then he shifted back to human form, stepping away from Theron's broken body. "You're right," Maelor said. "I'm not my father. I don't rule through fear and death." He looked down at Theron with contempt. "Theron Blackmaw, you are beaten. Your challenge has failed. By the laws of our people, you will submit or be exiled. Choose." Theron's face was a mask of hatred, but he wasn't stupid. "I submit," he ground out. "I acknowledge your dominance. Then hear my command," Maelor said, his voice carrying to every wolf watching. You will complete the rejection ritual. You will sever any remaining bond to Sapphire Ravenclaw officially and irrevocably, and you will renounce any claim to her son. Do you understand? I understand. Do it now. The gathered wolves fell silent as Theron struggled to his feet, his broken leg dragging. He looked at Sapphire, and she saw something crack in his expression. Regret, perhaps, or simply the realization of what he had lost. I, Theron Blackmaw, Alpha of the Shadowpine Pack, do formally and irrevocably reject you, Sapphire Ravenclaw, as my mate and Omega. He said it 3 times, each repetition cutting like a blade, but different from before. This time, Sapphire felt the mate bond that had been hanging in tatters finally dissolve. The piece of her soul that had been tied to Theron snapped free, leaving her gasping, but where she had expected more pain, more loss, she felt something else. Relief. Freedom. The shadow that had been hanging over her since the rejection finally lifted. I renounce all claims to the child known as Draven, Theron continued, and each word seemed to cost him. He is not my heir, not my son, not my responsibility. It's done, the elder officiating declared. The rejection is complete. The bond is severed. By our laws and in sight of the moon goddess, Sapphire Ravenclaw is free. Maelor crossed the clearing in 3 strides and pulled Sapphire into his arms. She collapsed against him, sobbing not from grief, but from relief so overwhelming it threatened to drown her. It's over, Maelor murmured into her hair. It's finally over. You won, she said, pulling back to look at his face. It was swollen and bloody, would bear new scars, but he was alive. He was here. You kept your promise. Always, he said. I'll always keep my promises to you. Around them, the Crimson Peak wolves erupted in celebration, howls rising to the morning sky. The Shadowpine wolves gathered their broken alpha and retreated, their heads low in submission and shame. The elder approached them, a small smile on his weathered face. That was well done, Alpha Redwyn. You showed both strength and mercy. The Pax will remember this. I hope they remember that family is worth fighting for, Maelor replied. That love is stronger than tradition or politics. Some will, some won't. The elder shrugged. But that's not your concern. You have what matters. He looked at Sapphire. And you, Omega, you're free to choose your own path now. What will you do? Sapphire looked up at Maelor, at the male who had risked everything for her, who had stood between her and her worst nightmare, and emerged victorious. The choice was so easy, it was laughable. I choose him, she said simply. I choose Maelor. I choose Crimson Peak. I choose this family. Then let me be the first to offer congratulations, the elder said. May the moon goddess bless your union. They returned to the Packlands in triumph, carried on the shoulders of celebrating wolves. Draven was returned to them, the white cub yipping with joy as he bounced between Maelor and Sapphire. When he shifted to human form, his first word was clear and perfect. Papa! Maelor caught him up, spinning him in the air as Draven shrieked with laughter. That's right, little one. Papa's here. Papa's always going to be here. That night, under a full moon that seemed to shine brighter than usual, Maelor and Sapphire stood before the pack with Alara officiating. The bonding ceremony was simple but profound, witnessed by every member of Crimson Peak. Do you, Maelor Redwyn, take Sapphire Ravenclaw as your mate, to stand with her in all things, to protect and cherish her, to honor the bond the moon goddess has woven between you? I do, Maelor said, his eyes never leaving Sapphire's face. Do you, Sapphire Ravenclaw, take Maelor Redwyn as your mate, to stand with him in all things, to love and support him, to honor the bond the moon goddess has woven between you? I do, Sapphire whispered, tears streaming down her face. Then by the power granted to me, and in sight of the moon goddess, I declare you bonded. May your lives be long, and your love be eternal." As Maelor pulled her into a kiss, Sapphire felt it. The mate bond, finally snapping into place, pure and golden and perfect. It rushed through her like sunlight, connecting her to Maelor in ways she couldn't begin to describe. She could feel his love, his joy, his absolute certainty that this was right. And through the bond, he could feel hers. When they parted, both were crying, overwhelmed by the intensity of their connection. "Can you feel it?" Sapphire asked. "Yes," Maelor breathed. "Gods, yes. You're mine. Finally, truly mine." "And you're mine," she replied, pressing her hand over his heart. "Forever." The celebration lasted long into the night. But eventually, Maelor and Sapphire slipped away to their cottage, Draven sleeping peacefully in Maelor's arms. They put him to bed together, standing over his cradle and watching him breathe. "He's beautiful," Maelor said softly. "Our son." "Our son," Sapphire agreed, because that's what Draven was now. Not Theron's cast-off child, but Maelor's boy. Their family. They made love that night, with a tenderness that spoke of new beginnings, of wounds finally healed and futures finally bright. Through the bond, Sapphire could feel every emotion Maelor experienced, could feel his love wrapping around her like a blanket. And he could feel hers, fierce and unshakable. "I love you," she whispered as they lay tangled together afterward, the moon painting silver patterns on their skin through the window. "I love you," he replied, "my mate, my heart, my everything." The years that followed were the happiest of Sapphire's life. Draven grew into a strong, confident boy, his white fur marking him as special among the pack. He called Maelor Papa without hesitation, and Maelor doted on him with the devotion of any father. They had more children, 2 more boys and a girl, each one loved and cherished. The cottage expanded into a proper home, filled with laughter and love and the chaos of a growing family. Sapphire took on a leadership role in the pack, helping to mediate disputes and care for Omegas and children. She found she had a gift for it, for seeing solutions where others saw only problems. Maelor often joked that she was the real power in Crimson Peak, that he just looked intimidating while she did all the actual work. Shadowpine recovered from Theron's defeat, though their former alpha was never the same. He mated eventually, to a quiet Omega, who seemed content to let him rebuild his shattered pride. They had children of their own, but none had the distinctive white fur of Draven. Sometimes Sapphire wondered if Theron regretted his choices, if he looked at his life and mourned what he had thrown away. But mostly, she didn't think about him at all. That part of her life was over, a closed chapter. On Draven's 10th birthday, the pack gathered for a celebration. The boy was the image of Maelor now, all long limbs and fierce determination, though his white fur remained unique. He shifted with ease, comfortable in both forms, and already showed promise as a future leader. "Mama, watch," he called, and then he was racing across the clearing in wolf form, his siblings chasing after him with joyful yips. Sapphire leaned against Maelor, his arm around her waist, their youngest daughter sleeping against her chest. "We did good," she murmured. "We did better than good," Maelor corrected. "We built something beautiful. A family, a legacy." "Thank you," she said, tilting her head to look up at him. "For finding me, for saving me, for giving me all of this." "Thank you for trusting me," he replied, "for giving me a chance when you had every reason not to, for making me a father, for making me whole." As the sun set and the moon rose, painting the world in silver light, Sapphire thought back to that terrible night in the forest, when she had been alone and broken, certain she would die. She thought about the Omega she had been, rejected and cast aside, convinced she was worthless. That Omega was gone, transformed by love and acceptance and her own strength. In her place stood someone new, someone who knew her worth, someone who had fought her way back from the edge and found not just survival, but joy. The moon hung full and bright above them, and Sapphire sent a silent prayer of thanks to the goddess who had brought her through the darkness, who had led Malor to that forest clearing, who had seen fit to give her a second chance. "What are you thinking?" Malor asked, sensing her introspection through the bond. "That I'm home," she said simply. "Finally, truly home." He kissed the top of her head, his love washing over her through their bond. "Welcome home, my heart. Welcome home." And as their children played under the watchful eye of the pack, as the moon blessed them with her silver light, Sapphire Redwin, knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The cursed labor that had nearly killed her had instead led her to this: a family, a pack, a love that would last forever. The moon had witnessed her suffering, but it had also witnessed her salvation, and it would witness all the beautiful days to come, a silent guardian watching over the white wolf pup and the family that loved him, the rejected Omega who became a leader, and the Alpha who proved that strength and mercy could coexist. Their story was written in moonlight and blood, in pain and triumph, in endings that became beginnings, and it was perfect. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this beautiful love story. Let us know what you thought of this tale full of emotions and surprises. Tell us your name, where you're watching from, and rate this story from 0 to 10 if it touched your heart. And if you enjoyed the plot, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the amazing new stories coming soon. See you next time.